Hi there, I'm Margaret Wilson. After 32 years teaching high school English, I thought I had my retirement all figured out. My pension seemed decent on paper. I'd saved what I could. But then inflation hit, my property taxes went up, and suddenly my comfortable retirement didn't feel so comfortable anymore. I remember standing in the grocery store about 18 months ago, staring at a carton of eggs that cost nearly twice what they did the month before. I actually put them back. Me, the woman who baked cookies for 3 decades of students, couldn't justify buying eggs. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and cried. Because I didn't know how I was going to make it work anymore on this fixed income. You know, nobody really prepares you for how quickly things can change when you're living on a fixed income. One month you're managing fine, the next you're cutting back on fresh produce because the prices jumped. And it's not just food, it's medications, utilities, home repairs. Everything seems to get more expensive while your income stays exactly the same. I started noticing myself making compromises I never thought I'd make. Watering down my orange juice. Buying the damaged produce. Skipping meals some days. And I kept telling myself, this is temporary, things will get better, but they didn't get better on their own. The breaking point came when my neighbor Judy invited me over for dinner, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd eat a properly balanced meal. Her plate had color, actual vegetables, while I'd been living on pasta and canned soup for weeks. That's when I knew something had to change. I've always been somewhat frugal. You don't become a teacher for the money, after all. But there's a difference between being careful with money and feeling genuine food insecurity in your 70s. I needed to stop seeing my situation as a personal failure and start viewing it as a problem to solve. Just like I used to tell my students, difficult doesn't mean impossible. So I decided to approach this systematically, the way I used to approach lesson planning. I gave myself 3 months to completely overhaul how I thought about food, shopping, and cooking on a limited budget. No more reactive penny pinching. I needed a sustainable strategy. The first thing I did was admit I needed help, which wasn't easy for someone who's spent her life being the helper. I reached out to a financial advisor who specialized in seniors living on fixed incomes. She helped me see that my food budget wasn't actually too small. I was just spending it inefficiently. Now, I'd always thought I was good at planning. After all, I'd created thousands of lesson plans over my career. But food planning, that was different. I'd fallen into the trap of shopping without a strategy. My first step was tracking every single food expense for a month. Every coffee, every impulse buy at the checkout, everything. The results were, well, eye-opening to say the least. I was spending nearly 40% of my food budget on convenience items and unplanned purchases. 40%. That's money I couldn't afford to waste. So I developed what I call my teacher's meal planning system. Every Sunday, I sit down with my coffee and plan out every single meal for the week ahead. And I mean everything: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. I create a detailed shopping list based only on what I need for those meals, plus a few staples when they're on sale. But here's the key difference from how I used to shop. I now plan my meals around what's on sale that week, not the other way around. I check all the flyers, digital coupons, and my store's app before I even think about what I want to eat. If chicken is on sale, guess what? It's going to be a chicken-heavy week. If it's not on sale, it's not on my table. One of the biggest changes I made was in how I think about quantity. When you're on a tight budget, buying in bulk seems counterintuitive. Who has extra money to spend up front? But I learned that strategic bulk buying can dramatically reduce your cost per meal. Now, I'm not talking about those massive warehouse stores where you need to buy enough pasta to feed a small army. I'm talking about being strategic with sales at regular grocery stores. When something non-perishable that I use regularly goes on a deep discount, I buy as much as I can reasonably store and use before the expiration date. Last month, my favorite pasta sauce was marked down from $3.99 to $1.50 a jar. I bought 12 jars. Yes, that's $18 up front instead of the $3 I would have spent on just 2 jars for that week. But now I have pasta sauce for months at almost 60% off the regular price. The trick is to only bulk buy items that 1. You'll definitely use, 2. Have a long shelf life, and 3. Are genuinely discounted, not just marketed that way. I keep a price book, yes, an actual notebook, where I track the regular prices of items I buy often, so I know when a sale is actually a good deal. You know what changed everything for me? Really learning how to use my freezer. And I don't just mean for storing ice cream and frozen dinners. When I was working, I never had time to properly batch cook. Now it's become my secret weapon. When ground beef goes on sale, I buy several pounds, cook it all at once with basic seasonings, and freeze it in meal-sized portions. Same with chicken, rice, beans, even chopped onions and peppers when they're in season and affordable. I've learned that almost everything can be frozen if you know the right technique. Milk, cheese, bread, even eggs. I freeze sliced bread flat in freezer bags and just take out what I need each day. No more throwing away moldy bread, which used to happen all too often when I lived alone. But the real game changer was learning to freeze complete meals. On Sundays, I often make a big batch of something: soup, casserole, lasagna, and freeze individual portions. It's my own version of convenience food, but at a fraction of the cost and much healthier than the processed alternatives. My freezer isn't just storing food, it's storing money and time. And both of those are precious when you're living on a fixed income. Let me tell you about my protein. Revelation. I grew up in a meat and potatoes household where dinner wasn't dinner without a sizable piece of animal protein. I carried that mindset into adulthood, and even in retirement, I was spending a disproportionate amount of my food budget on meat. Then I started exploring more affordable protein options, partly out of necessity, and partly because my doctor had been gently suggesting I diversify my diet for years. I discovered that beans, lentils, eggs, canned fish, and tofu could provide plenty of protein at a fraction of the cost. I'm not saying I've gone vegetarian. I still enjoy meat, but now it's more of a flavoring than the center of the plate. I might use half a pound of ground turkey to flavor a big pot of bean chili instead of using 2 pounds as the main ingredient. My grocery store often marks down meat that's close to its sell-by date, usually around 30–50% off. I either cook it that day or freeze it immediately. This shift in thinking about protein has probably saved me more money than any other single change I've made. And honestly, I feel better physically too. My arthritis doesn't flare up as often, which my doctor suggests might be related to eating less red meat and more plant proteins. You know what? They never teach in home economics. How to truly eat seasonally. As a teacher, I followed the academic calendar for decades, but I never really aligned my eating with nature's calendar until necessity forced me to. Now I structure my meals around what's in season, because that's when produce is both at its peak quality and its lowest price. In summer, I load up on fresh berries, tomatoes, and zucchini. In fall, it's all about apples, squash, and root vegetables. Winter means citrus fruits and hardy greens like kale and collard. I've also learned to preserve seasonal abundance. Last summer, when my neighbor's garden was overflowing with tomatoes, she gave me a huge bag. I spent one afternoon turning them into sauce that I froze in ice cube trays, then transferred to freezer bags. I had fresh-tasting tomato sauce well into winter, for essentially the cost of my time. The seasonal approach has another benefit too. It naturally varies your diet throughout the year, which is good for both your health and your palate. It's hard to get bored with food when your menu is constantly evolving with the seasons. This one was tough for me. Learning to accept help and utilize community resources. There's a certain pride that comes with being self-sufficient, especially for those of us who grew up in an era where accepting assistance carried a stigma. But part of being financially wise is using every appropriate resource available to you. I discovered that my community offers several programs specifically for seniors on fixed incomes. The local senior center has a monthly farmers market where local growers bring slightly imperfect produce to sell at steep discounts. I volunteer there once a month, which gives me first pick of the offerings. I also learned about SNAP benefits and realized that I qualified. Applying wasn't easy emotionally. I kept thinking about my father and how proud he was of never taking a handout. But then I remembered how he also taught me to be practical and use good sense. These programs exist for people exactly in my situation, and using them wisely means I can maintain my health and independence longer. There's also a community garden plot I share with 2 other retired teachers. We each contribute what we can: time, seeds, tools, knowledge, and split the harvest. Last year, that little 10x10 plot provided vegetables for 3 households from May through October. The lesson here: community isn't just about emotional support, it can be a practical resource for affordable nutrition too. Here's something I never thought much about until money got tight. Food waste is literally throwing money in the trash. The average American household wastes about 30% of the food they buy. When I tracked my own waste, I was shocked to find I wasn't much better. So I implemented what I call my zero-waste kitchen approach. Nothing, and I mean nothing, edible gets thrown away anymore. Vegetable scraps go into a container in the freezer until I have enough to make stock. Stale bread becomes croutons or breadcrumbs. Fruits on the edge of going bad get frozen for smoothies or baked into quick breads. I've started challenging myself to create meals from what others might consider nothing in the fridge. Some of my now favorite recipes came from these experiments. My kitchen sink frittata uses whatever vegetables, bits of cheese, or leftover meat are hanging around, and it's different every time. I also rethought storage to extend the life of my groceries. Did you know that storing mushrooms in a paper bag, rather than the plastic container they come in, can double their shelf life? Or that keeping herbs like cut flowers in a glass of water with a bag over them keeps them fresh for weeks instead of days. These little tricks add up to significant savings over time. The zero-waste approach isn't just good for my budget, it's satisfying in a way that's hard to describe. There's a certain creativity and resourcefulness that comes from making something delicious from what might otherwise have been discarded. You know what surprised me most about this journey? How much joy I've found in what started as a necessity. When I began changing my food habits, it was purely financial. I needed to eat for less, or I wouldn't be able to pay my other bills. But somewhere along the way, it became about more than just saving money. I've rediscovered the pleasure of cooking that I'd lost somewhat in my later working years, when convenience often won out over creativity. Now cooking is both my creative outlet and my self-care practice. There's something deeply satisfying about turning simple, affordable ingredients into something delicious. I've also built new connections through my food journey. The community garden introduced me to neighbors I might never have met otherwise. Sharing bulk purchases with my friend Diane means we both save money and have an excuse for weekly catch-ups. My grandson comes over on Sundays to help with meal prep. Learning valuable skills while we spend quality time together. And honestly, I'm eating better now than I did when I had more money to spend. It sounds counterintuitive, but when every food purchase has to be intentional, you tend to make healthier choices. My diet is more varied, more colorful, and more nutritious than it was when I was unconsciously grabbing whatever was convenient. So here I am, 18 months after that tearful night at my kitchen table, actually enjoying my relationship with food again. My grocery bill has decreased by nearly 40%, but the quality and variety of what I eat has improved dramatically. I'm no longer stressed about affording basic nutrition, which has given me mental space to enjoy other aspects of retirement. If you're watching this and feeling that same panic I felt, whether you're a retiree on a fixed income, a student on a tight budget, or anyone trying to eat well for less, please know that it gets better. It takes some learning, some planning, and some adjusting of expectations, but you can eat nutritiously and even enjoyably without breaking the bank. I'd love to hear your own experiences and tips in the comments below. What strategies have worked for you? What challenges are you still facing? This channel has become such a wonderful community of people helping each other navigate these challenges, and I'm grateful to be part of it. If you found this helpful, please consider subscribing to Budget Nutrition for more practical advice on affordable healthy eating. Next week, I'll be sharing my top 10 frugal but nutritious pantry staples and how to transform them into dozens of different meals. Until then, remember what I used to tell my students: difficulties are just problems waiting for solutions. And with a little creativity and planning, eating well on a budget is a problem we can definitely solve together. Thanks for listening to this retired teacher's journey, and I'll see you in the next video.